Okay, I'm going to start by just welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wattung Yu. Welcome to back to our class. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today is our second day of a 5-day course where I'm teaching harmony and relationships. And as you guys heard yesterday afternoon, that part of the problem is the anger that's in the mind, that anger, that hostility, that bitterness. That's what we're going to be talking about this morning in terms of using a technique to actually eliminate that. It's craving, desire, attachment that's causing any kind of discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Any of those feelings and others are all being caused by craving, desire, attachment. And it's breathing, mindfulness, meditation, generosity, and of course the entire Eightfold Path that's working to eliminate that. But then there's this anger that can arise, and then the lesser versions like the frustration, agitation, annoyance, things like this. So I'm going to teach you guys loving kindness meditation, because this is what's going to slowly wear away those kinds of qualities in the mind, those kind of aspects of the mind, so that you can get to a point where the mind's peaceful and joyful. But as long as you have anger, any of those lesser versions in the mind, you can't experience peace and joy. So I'm going to teach this to you, then we'll actually do it together so you guys will get a chance to experience it. And this is what we'll be doing all throughout the course, is the loving kindness meditation, where other courses we do breathing mindfulness meditation all the way through. In this course, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation all the way through. Okay, so let me help you guys to understand this. The breathing mindfulness meditation, this is helping you to eliminate the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. That's the underlying cause of all discontentedness. And it's helping you to cultivate the mindfulness or awareness of mind, as well as concentration. And you're going to need all of these qualities. The mindfulness and the concentration is going to help you to be able to then bring into practice all the other teachings. And you're going to need to get rid of craving, desire, attachment, and training the mind to let go. So that's what that meditation is for. But then the loving kindness meditation, this is to eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will, and all the lesser versions. All those lesser versions like irritation, frustration, annoyment. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. That if you have dislike towards others, it's because your mind is craving for them to be a certain way. And as long as you have craving or wants or expectations and they aren't meeting that, you will dislike this person. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have a dislike for other beings. And it's this meditation and all the other teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you to be able to do that. So it's helping to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. And it's helping you to cultivate this loving kindness for all beings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will have love for all beings. So first, let's talk about what loving kindness is so that you'll understand this. Oftentimes, if people are using the Pali word, they might use the word metta. You might have heard this before, but I don't use the Pali words because it helps you to learn in English. So the way that I describe loving kindness is it's active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. It's important that you don't judge others to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not. That's not what you're interested in. Sometimes we're taught, don't respect others until they respect you first. Well, if everybody was doing that, nobody would be respecting anybody because everybody would be waiting for someone else to respect them first. So if you did this with your loving kindness, where you were judging others and trying to determine whether or not they deserve your loving kindness or not, you wouldn't be actually practicing loving kindness with all beings. You need to get to the point where you just have love and kindness for all beings, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this active goodwill. This is the antidote or the wholesome root, the remedy for anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions. It's going to help eliminate the harshness, the bitterness, the hostility, the aggression, the resentment in the mind. It also helps, as you're training your mind with loving kindness meditation, to eliminate any negative self-talk. If you have like an inner dialogue that's kind of diminishing and degrading, where you degrade this being who you are, this is going to help you transform that too, so you don't continue to do that kind of thing, because that can be really deflating and defeating within your own mind. It can sabotage your ability to have peace and joy in your day-to-day life and have harmonious relationships. So this meditation is going to help you to have love and kindness for this being who you are as well, not just others. And then when we get to the Brahma Viharas this afternoon, you'll see that loving kindness is part of the Brahma Viharas. These are 4 healthy mental states that need to be cultivated in the mind in order to move it towards enlightenment. Among other qualities, the Brahma Viharas are qualities that you're cultivating to antidote certain symptoms in the mind. So I'd like to share with you how loving kindness integrates into the Eightfold Path. I shared with you yesterday how the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching and everything else integrates into it in one way or another. So these are some of the places in the Eightfold Path where loving kindness integrates into it. If you remember back to right intention, I shared with you the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. So renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up the unwholesomeness, to let go of false beliefs and opinions as you're bringing in wisdom. But then the intention or the thinking or the thought of non-ill will, that's goodwill. That's loving kindness. So you need to have this intention or this thinking or this thought of goodwill towards all beings. Then you see the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Cultivating the mind with loving kindness will actually help you to be able to accomplish this. So you can see where loving kindness plugs into right intention, which is the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. And then your speech, your actions, and your livelihood emanates from your intentions, so that your intentions, your speech, and your actions can all be in sync with each other. So by cultivating the mind with a intention or thinking a thought of goodwill, this is what's going to help you put all the rest of the path into practice. So how could you ever develop the thinking or the thought of goodwill if the Buddha didn't provide you a tool or a technique to do that? So that's what loving kindness meditation is an opportunity for you to cultivate this thinking or thought or this intention of goodwill towards all beings. And then you can remember back to right speech, where the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, the 5th factor is spoken with a mind of loving kindness. Again, how could you do that if you didn't have a technique of how to cultivate that? Mind of loving kindness without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person back here. Back one moment, the internet kind of went out here. They just got back online. Hey guys, welcome back. What I was sharing was that loving kindness is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, right? You're not judging whether these beings deserve your loving kindness or not. Just because they're speaking harsh doesn't mean that you speak harsh back, because that's just going to keep your problems going on and on and on. If someone's trying to argue with you, the last thing you're interested in doing is arguing back. It's just going to keep the argument going. If you have a rubber ball and somebody throws this rubber ball around, and this rubber ball is anger and hatred and ill will, and it's bouncing around the room, and then you pick it up and then you throw it around the room, and they pick it up and they throw it around the room. Next thing you know, you got all this anger and hatred and irritation and frustration all bouncing all around the room. But if somebody picks up a rubber ball of anger and they throw it around the room, you can just watch it roll to the corner and lose its energy. If you don't feed that anger, if you don't feed the argument, then it's going to extinguish because it's impermanent, right? But if you argue back and you get really angry and frustrated back, you're just keeping the problem going. So what the Buddha is teaching you is no matter what other people are doing, reside with loving kindness. Remain unaffected. Don't allow your mind to be affected by the things that other people are choosing to do. Okay, here's some more teachings from the Buddha on loving kindness and loving kindness meditation. This one he's actually teaching his son. One moment, let me turn on the visual aids for the guys online since they went away. Okay, there you guys go. You can see the visual aids now. Okay, so this particular teaching, he's teaching his son. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and he never came back. This isn't actually true. This is what some people think, but that's for people who haven't actually learned the original words of the Buddha. He went away for 6 years to train his mind, but then he ended up coming back, and his wife, his son, his stepmother, a lot of his cousins and brother-in-laws, they started joining him to actually learn his teachings to be able to get to enlightenment. And his son and his wife and his mother-in-law, or his stepmother, ended up getting to enlightenment during his lifetime. So here he's speaking to his son Rahula. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is how a Buddha speaks. Very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't have to interpret his words. You don't have to figure out what he was saying or what he was trying to teach you. He just says it very plainly and very clearly because he knows that this meditation is what transformed his mind to be able to get to this peace and joy where there's no more anger. And he's saying, this is what'll do it. This is what's going to do it for you. So he's explaining that very clearly to his son. Then here he says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is where you need to go out into the world and practice loving kindness. It's not just about meditation. If you were meditating, even though you can't, but let's just say you were meditating 23 hours a day and you went out into the world for an hour a day and you were bitter and harsh and hostile to people around you, you're not enlightened. Your mind hasn't eliminated its anger, right? So no matter how much meditation you're doing, you've got to transform your mind by bringing the teachings into your day-to-day life where you're practicing loving kindness on a day-to-day basis through your intention, speech, and actions. This is where the transformation is really occurring. So the meditation is there to support the mind and lift the mind up. It's almost like filling up your gas tank, but then you go out into the world and you practice loving kindness on a day-to-day basis through your intentions, speech, and actions with all the people that you're around. This is how you're going to transform your relationships. Because as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, your relationships are just going to continue to have problems in them. So you're going to need to transform your mind with the meditation, but then you're going to need to go out into the world and be loving and kind with the people around you. Here's another place where the Buddha is talking about loving kindness. I'll give you some background on this before I share it. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you might think that he was like the only game in town and he was the only one teaching, but that's not actually true. There were multiple people who were teaching, and they were all claiming that it was their teachings that lead to enlightenment. But the Buddha knew it was his teachings that lead to enlightenment, but there was these other teachers who were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. So the students of those teachers would sometimes come together with the students of the Buddha. The students of the Buddha and these students would sometimes eat together and sit down and talk. Kind of like probably if you guys went somewhere and you ran into somebody that had studied at some retreat, you guys might kind of compare notes about what is your teacher teaching you, what is my teacher teaching me, and you guys might be kind of talking about those kinds of things. So the Buddha is talking to his students and saying essentially, suppose they should ask, meaning those other students from other teachers. But what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. Okay, so this liberation that he's talking about is freedom. This is freedom from your strong feelings. Those strong feelings that are motivating unskillful conduct, the anger, the hate, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, the dislike in the mind, that's motivating unskillful conduct in your relationships. So when you're attending to loving kindness and loving kindness meditation, this is going to ensure that unarisen anger does not arise. That unarisen anger is those mental objects that we were talking about yesterday, that there's a deeply rooted container in your mind of ill will. Right now, it's not arisen. Right now, you're just hanging out, you're just listening to somebody speak, there's no anger in your mind. But if one of your cravings get triggered, that anger can arise. So that's the unarisen anger. There's unarisen anger in your mind. It hasn't arisen yet. It's just there in that mental object, that deeply rooted container. And what the Buddha is saying is the way to get rid of that is loving kindness. Practicing loving kindness meditation will get rid of that unarisen anger. It'll get rid of that mental object of ill will. And then he says, arisen anger is abandoned. So when you have anger in the mind that has actually arisen, it's loving kindness that's going to eliminate it, because you're not interested in allowing your mind to stay wired with anger. Whenever your mind starts experiencing anger, you would like to get rid of that as soon as possible so that the mind doesn't stay wired that way. So it's loving kindness that's going to allow you to do that. So in a situation where you're noticing anger starting to arise, you would like to be able to cut that off and let it go, and then bring in the loving kindness. So if you think back to yesterday, I was teaching you right mindfulness, where you have awareness of your mind. And then when you see unwholesome qualities, you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. And then the wholesome qualities, you apply right effort to bring those into the mind. So that's what you would like to do, is with your mindfulness, develop the ability to observe the anger starting to arise, and now cut it off and let it go, and bring in the loving kindness. That's the antidote. That's the remedy. That's the solution to your anger. It's the exact opposite. So you can rewire your mind. Instead of going down this path of anger and hatred and ill will, which you know where that leads, it leads to broken relationships, right? And instead of going down that path, you can forge this new pathway in the mind. You can rewire the mind to be loving and kind. Because if you understand now that your anger is being caused by your own craving, desire, attachment, the last thing you're interested in doing is being bitter and harsh and hostile towards another person. Because that other person isn't the one who's causing your anger. It's coming from within your own mind. So whenever you experience frustration or anger or hostility coming up in the mind, rather than going down this well-worn path of anger, that maybe the bushes are pushed back, the trees are all cut down, maybe the grass is worn out, maybe you've been down that path a lot of times and it leads to broken relationships, which doesn't feel good, right? Instead of going down that path, you got to get out your machete and forge this new path and start making this new pathway where you're now creating loving kindness in the mind, and you're rewiring the mind to have loving kindness. So now when something's happening, instead of attributing that anger to that person, make sure you understand that it's your own cravings that's causing this. And now arise this loving kindness, go down this path of loving kindness. Initially, it's going to be very challenging because the path isn't cut out yet, right? You got to get out your machete and break down all the bushes. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be a bit of a struggle and difficult to go down this path. But the more you go down this path, this becomes the well-worn path, the loving kindness. And this old path of anger, that gets overgrown, and your mind doesn't even look down that path anymore because you know it's unwise to go down that path. Instead, this path becomes really well worn, where now you can go down this path of loving kindness. And now more and more you'll have a tendency to go down that path because you've rewired the mind. Okay, so that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is that when arisen anger is coming up in the mind, it's loving kindness that's going to allow you to abandon that. Okay, so before I explain to you how to do loving kindness meditation, does anybody have any questions on anything I've been sharing so far? For those of you guys online, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Chris has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so there's 3 words. There's loving, kindness, and meditation. Could you talk a bit about loving and kindness, what each of those mean individually and then together?
Sure. I think you came in a little bit behind, but this is what I gave as a definition for loving kindness. That loving kindness is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. You're not interested in judging others to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not. You're interested in practicing active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, because oftentimes we've been taught, like, don't respect others until they respect you first. But if you did that and everybody in the world was doing that, nobody would be respecting anybody, because everybody would be waiting. Okay, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. Well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. So if you did that with your loving kindness, which I don't suggest you do with your respect either, but if you did that with your loving kindness, you wouldn't be having loving kindness with anybody, because you'd be judging them to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not. Instead, you would like to be loving and kind with all beings, where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this active goodwill towards them. This is what you would like to cultivate in the mind. And then meditation, you haven't been in any classes with me when I've defined meditation, but what meditation is it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're either working to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities or cultivate certain wholesome qualities. And you're doing this in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. With loving kindness meditation, we do it in the seated, lying, and standing. We don't do it in the walking position. but it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're working to eliminate certain unwholesome aspects of the mind or cultivate certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you're doing that in the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. And this is what the quality, the wholesome quality that you're cultivating. And then just since you came in, this is what I shared at the beginning. So this was the title slide. What I started was, these are the unwholesome qualities you're eliminating in breathing mindfulness meditation. This is the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating in breathing mindfulness meditation. And then these are the qualities that you're eliminating in the loving kindness meditation. And these are the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating in the loving kindness meditation. So this is how you can think about the meditation that I'm going to teach you guys. Okay. So let me see if we have any questions online. Okay, let me see about Facebook. We don't have any in YouTube. There's none in Zoom. Okay, we don't have any questions online. All right, so what I'm going to do now is teach you guys loving kindness meditation, and then we'll actually do it together as a group. And we'll be doing this each morning and each afternoon to give you guys plenty of practice with this. The way that I do loving kindness meditation is I still start out with the chanting, which I explained to you guys yesterday. That helps to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation. Then I do a brief breathing mindfulness meditation session, just to kind of like help the mind to get synced up with the breath for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes is what you're doing. You're going to hear me guiding you in the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we'll do that for like maybe 3 to 5 minutes of breathing mindfulness meditation. Then you're going to hear me come in with these affirmations, and I'm going to be customizing this for the group of people that are here. This is just the visual aid to be able to help you guys see how we structure it. But you're going to hear me say things like, may I be peaceful. And you do this on the out breath. And then you breathe in, may I be safe. And then you're doing that on the out breath. And then you breathe in, and then may I be well. Again, on the out breath. And then you breathe in, and then may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. So you start with I, because you need to have loving kindness for this being who you are before you can have loving kindness for others. If you don't know how to love yourself, you're not going to be able to have love for others. So you need to learn how to love this being. So we start with I. Then you go through these successively wider and wider rings until you ultimately get to all beings, right? Because you're not interested in leaving any being out. These individual rings, when you do this on your own, you would like to customize it for yourself, because you know where the anger and the hatred and the frustration and agitation is within your own life. So you're going to need to customize this. You might put a ring or two of people that you already have loving kindness for. That helps to kind of bubble up the loving kindness. Then you put a ring or two of people that you're kind of neutral about. Maybe like coworkers, maybe neighbors. You don't love them or hate. You don't necessarily hate them, but you don't necessarily love them either. You're just kind of more neutral about them. So you like to put a ring or two of them. Then you would ultimately like to get to a ring or two of people that you do have anger and hatred towards. It could be people that are currently in your life, or it could be people in the past that you'll never ever see again. They could actually be people that are dead and you're never going to see them again. But if your mind's holding on to anger, it's going to hinder you. You're not going to be able to experience liberation and peace and joy in the mind. Sometimes we hold on to our anger thinking that this is a way to get back at the other person. It's kind of like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn other people. The only person getting burned is you, right? So it would be very unwise to hold on to your anger because it's only harming your own mind. So you would like to put a ring or two of people that you do have anger towards. And then ultimately you'd like to get to all beings. Okay. And when you're customizing this on your own, you might go through this customization multiple times, right? When I first started this, I used to do, may I be peaceful. I did this for myself 2 or 3 or 4 rings, right? And then I had a lot of anger and resentment towards my mom for things that happened in my childhood. So I put her in there for 2 or 3 or 4 rings. And then I went to all beings. You like to do about 6 to 8 rings. Anything more than this, it's kind of too much for the mind. So about 6 to 8 rings is what works out best, right? So eventually you get to all beings. So I did that for a good long while. It takes a good long while. It took me 6 months to kind of wear away the anger towards my mom. The Buddha gives you this analogy. He says, it's kind of like a digging tool, that if you had a digging tool with a wooden handle and you were digging with this wooden handle every day you're wearing away wood from the handle, but you don't know how much wood you're wearing away. But when you get to the end of that handle where it's completely exhausted, you'll know that. You'll know it's time to replace the handle. So it's the same thing that is true, that each day when you're meditating like this, you're not going to know how much anger you're wearing away, but when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. Because it'll be 6 months, a year, 2 years, you haven't had any anger towards this person whatsoever, you'll know that your anger is completely gone. So you're not going to know each day how much wood you're wearing away from the handle. You're not going to know how much anger you're wearing away each day, but when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. So I did my mom for a good 6 months, and then I noticed that our relationship had significantly improved, that I was being loving and kind and warm and gentle, and she was starting to do those kinds of things as well, and we were able to transform our relationship, right? But it's going to take you time to do that. But then I started customizing my meditation even further. So at that time I was in business. So maybe there was an employee that I was a little bit annoyed with, or maybe there was a customer that I was agitated with, or maybe there was someone who cut me off in traffic and I didn't even know their name. Maybe they went into my meditation for 3 or 4 days. Maybe this employee was in my meditation for a week or so. Maybe this customer was in there for a week or 2. And then I kind of moved those people out and moved other people in. One time there was this landlord who came in, he was up in my face. He was threatening to kill me in front of my customers, in front of my employees, and all this kind of stuff. And he went into my meditation for a little while. Just in case there was any anger in there, I was interested to make sure that I didn't allow that to get rooted into the mind. So you're going to customize these rings, and you're probably going to need to have someone in there for a minimum of 3 days. Like that person who was in the traffic, I had them in there for like 3 days just to make sure my mind didn't have any anger. But maybe like the landlord, they were in there for maybe like a week or 2. My mom, she was in there for 6 months because there was a lot more anger in there. So you're going to need to customize this. That's where your mindfulness comes in, that you need to have awareness of mind to know where your anger and frustration is. So you'll move people in and out of this meditation based on your specific needs. When I do this meditation with you guys, I'm going to do it in a general way that applies to all of us, but you would like to customize it for your specific needs. Okay, so you go through all these rings and you eventually get to all beings. And now you go back to breathing mindfulness meditation for like another 3 to 5 minutes. And then you come out with the chanting. That breathing mindfulness meditation at the end, that's there for you to cut off any anger that has arisen. When I was doing these meditations, prior to the meditation, I didn't have any arisen anger towards my mom because it was in there, but it hadn't arisen. So I was feeling just fine before the meditation. But then when I would sit down and do the meditation and I would start doing this loving kindness for mom, I would start remembering some of the things that happened in my childhood, and then the anger would come up. So I would be a little bit angry after the meditation, and I wasn't prior. So I used the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end in order to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off, so that then you could end your meditation without any anger in your mind, right? So this is the way that you can structure your meditation. It's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich. You've got the loving kindness in the middle, right? And then the lettuce and tomato is like the breathing mindfulness meditation on the immediate outside of the loving kindness. And then the bread that's holding it all together, that's the chanting, right? So you can think about it this way. So you're going to need to customize this meditation for your specific needs. This breathing mindfulness meditation at the end that is there to cut off and cut off and cut off. If you get to the end of your loving kindness meditation and you notice that there's loving kindness permeating in the mind, you don't have to do the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end. That's there if you need it. So I'm going to guide you in that way so you can see the structure. But when you're doing this on your own, if you don't need that breathing mindfulness at the end, you could just, sit with the loving kindness, because as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment, you're going to be doing your loving kindness meditation, and the loving kindness is going to be permeating in the mind. It's going to be permeating, and it's unconditional love, which you guys are going to learn about tomorrow. It's going to be unconditional love. So if you did put the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end, it's okay. You're not going to harm anything, because you can't cut off unconditional love. It's not possible because there's no condition that's causing it, so you can't cut it off. So if you have true loving kindness permeating in the mind and you did breathing mindfulness meditation at the end, it's not going to harm you, but just understand you don't have to include that if you're not interested. Also, I'll share this with you. Sometimes when people teach loving kindness meditation, they think that the goal of this is to actually send loving kindness to other people. They think that they're somehow changing other people through their meditation. You can't do this. The only thing that's happening is you're changing your own mind. So while we're saying, may mom be peaceful, we're not wishing mom is peaceful. We're not hoping mom is peaceful. We're not craving and desiring for mom to be peaceful. We're not wanting that. We're not asking anybody to intervene on our behalf. It's not like a prayer or anything that we're trying to change mom. Instead, we're trying to sit with our own thoughts and cultivate this love and this kindness, this genuine interest in seeing mom be well, so that now when we're around mom, we can be loving and kind with mom. Because the way that it used to work for me and my mom is that when we would talk, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off, right? Like she would get angry about something, I would get angry about something. She would pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around and be bitter, harsh, and hostile. And I would do the same thing right back. But when I started doing this meditation, I changed. That when mom started picking up the rubber ball of anger and throwing it around, I just watched it roll to the corner of the room. It lost its energy, right? I would either just walk away, or sometimes we'd be on the phone and she would start to be angry and hostile and bitter and judgmental. And in the past, where I would argue right back, I started doing something different. I would say, Mom, I know in the past that I've been bitter and harsh and hostile with you, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to get off the phone and I'm going to let you think about what it is that you just said, and we'll talk another time. I love you, Mom. Bye-bye. Right? I'll just get off the phone. Right? Rather than sit there and let her continue to be angry and bitter and harsh and hostile. And then I wouldn't talk to her sometimes for 3 months or 6 months. And then we would start talking again and she would be fine for a few months. And the next thing you know, here comes the anger again. And I would do the same thing. And I would say, Mom, you know, our relationship is too important to me to be bitter and harsh and hostile with you. I know I did that in the past and I'm really sorry, but I'm not doing that anymore. I really love you and I'm going to get off this phone. I'm going to let you think about what you said. I love you, Mom. Be well. And I would get off the phone. And then slowly but surely, she transformed her mind. By the time she died in 2017, there was probably a good, I would say 10 years, maybe 12 years, where there wasn't any bitterness or hostility between us whatsoever. And it took me transforming my mind first. It was kind of like our relationship was like stuck like a log jam. There was all this anger and bitterness and hostility. There was this log jam. So what I did is I took out the log of anger. I took out the log of resentment. I took out the log of bitterness and hostility. And now everything started flowing in our relationship. And the way that I did this is with loving kindness meditation first, but then I used my intentions, my speech, and my actions to be more loving and kind. So I used to do things like go to her house and I would like help her at her house. I would help her cook food. She had problems with her wood deck in front of her house. So I removed all the boards and replaced all the boards. I did all these different things, practicing generosity with her. And so instead of being bitter, harsh, and hostile and angry towards her, I started being generous. I started being loving and kind. And I was using my wisdom to be able to transform this relationship. Those 3 wholesome roots: generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And this is how I was able to transform the relationship. And eventually, we had no problems whatsoever. So I'm going to do this with you guys each morning and each afternoon, and I'm going to be using these same affirmations, but just remember that it's up to you to customize these affirmations, and it's important for you to not think of this as a prayer, or that you're sending your loving kindness to somebody, or that you're trying to change somebody else. This is to change your mind so that now when you go around that person, you can be more loving and kind. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on the structure of the meditation?
I'm wondering if it can also be helpful to customize the affirmation structure. So for instance, instead of discontentedness as a whole, going into the subtypes of discontentedness, or like a certain thing. So for instance, different types of ill will, or ignorance, or ...
Different types, did you say, of ill will?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these statements that you have here, you can customize them, but what you would like them to be is non-burdening statements. So if I said, like, may mom be kind, that's like wanting something from mom, and I'm wanting her to be kind. And now I will only be loving and kind with her if she's kind with me. So you would like to do things like this where there's no burden. May mom be peaceful. It's just thinking in your mind, may she be peaceful. It's not wanting anything from her. It's not, you know, putting any burden on her shoulders, even though you can't put a burden on someone's shoulders, but that's not what you're interested in cultivating in the mind. So there's a way to customize these statements, but this is what worked for me, so I know it'll work for you. So if you use these 4, I know that it will work, but if you start changing and modifying it too much, it could potentially lead your mind in a direction that isn't actually cultivating loving kindness. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's go ahead and do this meditation together. This is going to be our morning meditation each morning. I'm going to start with the chanting, then I'm going to guide you in the breathing mindfulness meditation. Then we'll go into the loving kindness, back to breathing mindfulness, and then out with the chanting. Okay, so if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, these are the 3 positions that work really well with this meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Namasati Satatawa Manusrang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now go back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so just a couple of things to talk about here as we wrap this up, and I open up to any final questions that you guys might have on this topic of loving kindness meditation. Is you heard me share in the meditation with the affirmations, may all those who have caused me harm, and may all those who I have caused harm to. Yesterday, you guys learned that it's your own mind that's causing your discontentedness. So that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about those people who have caused you to be angry, because other people aren't causing you to be angry. When we talk about harm, what we mean is somebody's harmed you physically, they've harmed your material possessions, they've harmed your reputation, or you've done those things to others. You can't cause other people to be discontent, and they can't cause you to be discontent, but you can cause harm to others. So you can cause harm to someone physically, to their material possessions, to their reputation, and things like this. And if there's anybody that's caused that kind of harm to you, and you're holding on to anger because of that, because of your cravings, desires, attachments, you're working to eliminate your discontentedness through training your mind on the path to enlightenment. And part of what you need to be able to do is let go of this anger that your mind's holding on to. So that's what we're talking about when we say harm. And then also, sometimes when people do this meditation the first time, they can really notice a difference, even just in the first time. But other times people can't, right? Because this type of thing, it's not like a magical pill. It's not like you do it the first time and magically you're going to feel all this loving kindness permeating in the mind, especially if you have deeply rooted anger or resentment. So like when I first started doing this meditation, I didn't feel it at all for many, many months. I didn't notice really anything. I didn't notice that things were changing and shifting within the mind. But just know that things are shifting. And if you're not noticing any loving kindness starting to bubble up, this is all the more reason why you need to be doing this meditation. So this meditation will absolutely work to eliminate your anger, your hatred, your ill will, your frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike, as well as that negative self-talk within your own mind. But you're going to need to slowly wear this away. It's not going to just be a magical thing. But I have heard some people, they experience improvement right from the beginning. They can really notice it permeating in the mind. But if you're not noticing that, just understand that that's normal too. That's very normal. And that's all the more reason why it's important that you do this meditation and incorporate it into your day-to-day life. Out of your 2 or 3 meditations that you're doing each day, that's what I recommend, 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more, realizing that it takes 6 months, a year, 2 years to build up to that. What I would suggest is that you do the loving kindness meditation in the morning. It really helps to do this in the morning, because then you can go out into your day and be more loving and kind. It doesn't mean you can't do it in the middle of the day. It doesn't mean you can't do it in the evening. It's just if you're going to put it somewhere in your day, the morning tends to work out really well, so that you go to work, you go to spend time with your family or whatever it is that you're doing that with loving kindness permeating in the mind. So you can surely do it in the evenings as well. Say at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get a phone call and you start noticing anger coming up in your mind. hey, sit down and do some loving kindness meditation, right? There's no reason why you can't do it at any other time. But if you're looking for kind of a consistent place to put this, in the morning tends to work out really well so that you can start your day with a lot of loving kindness in the mind. So do you guys have any questions on this before we move on? Those of you guys online, you can ask questions too by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. And in Zoom, you can raise your hand if you have questions as well. Okay, no questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do here is it's now basically about 10:15. We're going to take our mid-morning break here and come back at 10:30. And what I'm going to teach you guys is identifying your cravings, desires, attachments, how to essentially analyze the mind. I'm going to teach you how to almost surgically go in and remove these, because yesterday you learned that this is the cause of discontentedness, but now I'm going to show you how to identify these and go in and almost surgically remove them. So take a 15-minute break, spend some time with each other, use the restroom if you need to, and then I'll see you guys in 15 minutes with this new topic. Okay, so thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. I'll see you in a bit.